What if something incredibly powerful for healing has been right in front of us this entire time, sitting quietly on store shelves, overlooked and underestimated, while billions of dollars have been spent trying to recreate its effects in a lab? And what if I told you that for seniors in particular, using just a small amount of this natural oil on your skin before going to bed each night could do far more than simply ease discomfort or reduce swelling for a short time? What if it could actually send signals inside your body that encourage your own stem cells to become active again, helping repair damaged tissue, and in some controlled lab environments, even encouraging abnormal or cancerous cells to shut down naturally? I understand how surprising that sounds because I had the exact same reaction when I first came across this body of research. But after more than 30 years in the medical field, I can tell you this is not speculation or hype. The data exists, it has been reviewed by experts, and it points to something that people, especially older adults, deserve to understand clearly. My name is Dr. William Lee, and if you're new here, this channel focuses on cutting through confusion and looking directly at what scientific evidence actually shows, not what marketing campaigns promote. Today, we are exploring a topic that remains largely under-discussed in senior health, and that is the wide-ranging healing potential of a specific natural oil when applied directly to aging skin, along with why using it at night may significantly enhance its effects. Stay with me because I will walk you through how this works inside the body, what makes this oil different, what research has found so far, and how it should be used correctly to get meaningful results. To understand why this matters, we need to start with something most people rarely think about in detail, which is how the skin changes as we grow older. After the age of 60, the skin undergoes significant biological shifts that go far beyond surface appearance. Skin is not just a covering. It is the largest organ in the body and acts as a complex interface between your internal systems and the outside environment. It contains nerve endings, immune cells, lymphatic pathways, and microscopic channels known as transdermal pathways that allow certain substances to pass through the skin and enter circulation. As aging progresses, collagen production declines steadily, typically by 1 to 2% each year, leading to thinner and less resilient skin. At the same time, the deeper dermal layer begins to weaken, and the mitochondria inside skin cells, which are responsible for generating cellular energy, become less efficient. This decline causes an increase in the production of reactive oxygen species, commonly known as free radicals, which the body cannot neutralize as effectively as it once could. The result is oxidative stress, a condition that not only affects how the skin looks, but also contributes to inflammation throughout the body. This chronic inflammation is closely linked to many age-related conditions, including heart disease, joint degeneration, neurological decline, and even cancer. However, there is another aspect of the skin that is rarely explained in everyday medical conversations, and it may be one of the most important pieces of this entire discussion. Embedded within the skin are epidermal stem cells, which are specialized cells capable of regenerating damaged tissue. In younger individuals, these cells are active and responsive, constantly working to repair and renew, but with age, they tend to become dormant. They are not gone, but they are no longer functioning at their full capacity. For years, researchers have been trying to answer a critical question. Is it possible to reactivate these cells safely without relying on aggressive treatments or medications that come with serious side effects? Increasingly, scientific literature suggests that certain naturally derived substances applied through the skin may offer a promising approach. And among those, one specific oil stands out in a way that is difficult to ignore. The oil in question is black seed oil, which comes from the plant Nigella sativa. Now, it is important not to confuse popular wellness claims with what the actual scientific literature is saying, because those two things are often very different. While black seed oil has been discussed in traditional medicine for centuries, modern research has now expanded significantly, with over 2,000 published studies examining its properties and active compounds. One of the most important of these compounds is thymoquinone, often abbreviated as TQ. This is where things start to become scientifically interesting, because Thymoquinone is not just a general antioxidant or mild anti-inflammatory agent. It interacts with multiple biological systems at the same time, which is unusual compared to most single-target pharmaceutical drugs. To understand its impact, we need to look at how it behaves inside the body. One of its primary actions is reducing inflammation at a cellular level. It does this by influencing enzymes such as COX-2, which are involved in generating inflammatory responses. Many common pain relief medications also target this pathway, but they often come with side effects affecting the stomach, liver, or kidneys when used long term. Thymoquinone, on the other hand, appears to regulate this inflammatory process without producing the same level of toxicity, at least according to early human and laboratory studies. Research published in peer-reviewed journals has shown that when applied topically, Nigella sativa oil can reduce visible and measurable signs of skin inflammation over a period of consistent use, often within several weeks. Another important mechanism involves oxidative stress, which we mentioned earlier as a key driver of aging. Thymoquinone acts as a direct scavenger of free radicals, meaning it can help neutralize these unstable molecules before they damage cells. But it also appears to do something even more significant. It activates a biological pathway known as NRF2. This pathway functions like a master control switch for the body's own antioxidant defenses. When NRF2 is activated, the body increases production of internal protective molecules such as glutathione. This is an important distinction because it means the compound is not only providing external support, but also encouraging the body to strengthen its own defense systems from within. Perhaps one of the most discussed areas of research is its potential effect on stem cells. Studies have investigated how thymoquinone interacts with signaling pathways involved in cell regeneration, particularly those related to tissue repair and cellular renewal. Certain findings suggest that it may influence pathways such as WNT signaling, which plays a role in regulating how stem cells divide and specialize. In simpler terms, this means it may help shift dormant or inactive cells into a more responsive state. While this research is still developing and not yet fully understood in a clinical context, it is one of the reasons scientists continue to study it so closely. Another layer of its activity involves the skin's microbiome, which is the collection of microorganisms that naturally live on the surface of the skin. As we age, this balance can become disrupted, contributing to conditions like irritation, dryness, or chronic skin disorders. Laboratory research suggests that black seed oil has antimicrobial properties that can help reduce harmful bacteria while still supporting a balanced microbial environment, rather than wiping it out completely the way stronger chemical agents sometimes do. This balanced effect is one of the reasons it is being studied in dermatological contexts. There is also ongoing laboratory research into its effects on abnormal cell behavior. In controlled studies on isolated cancer cells, thymoquinone has been observed to trigger a process called apoptosis, which is essentially programmed cell death. This is a natural mechanism the body uses to eliminate damaged or malfunctioning cells. Cancer cells often avoid this process, allowing them to grow unchecked. In lab settings, thymoquinone has shown the ability to reactivate this pathway in several types of cancer cell lines. However, it is important to be precise here. These findings are primarily from in vitro studies, meaning they are conducted outside the human body in controlled environments, and they do not automatically translate into clinical treatment outcomes. What makes this discussion more practical is how these effects interact with the skin itself when applied topically. The skin is not just a passive barrier, it is a biologically active organ that can absorb certain compounds and respond to them locally. This is where timing becomes especially important because the body's internal repair systems do not operate at a constant level throughout the day. This brings us to a part of the discussion that is often overlooked, but it may be just as important as the compound itself, and that is timing. The human body does not repair itself at a constant rate throughout the day. Instead, it follows a biological rhythm known as the circadian cycle, which controls when different systems are more active or more relaxed. During the night, particularly after sleep begins, the body shifts into a repair-focused state. Growth hormone levels increase, cellular regeneration processes become more active, and the immune system begins working more efficiently in the background. At the same time, Cortisol, which is a stress hormone that tends to suppress inflammation control and immune balance during the day, drops to its lowest levels. This shift creates a unique environment where healing processes are prioritized. Skin, in particular, becomes more receptive during these hours. Scientific studies in dermatology have shown that the skin's permeability changes during sleep, meaning that its ability to absorb certain compounds increases. This is sometimes referred to as enhanced nocturnal transdermal activity. In practical terms, it means that substances applied to the skin at night are more likely to penetrate deeper layers compared to those applied during the daytime when the body is focused on protection and external interaction. This is why the concept of applying certain bioactive oils before sleep is not just a lifestyle suggestion, but is actually aligned with the body's natural repair mechanisms. When a compound like black seed oil is used during this window, it is being introduced at a time when the skin is most biologically prepared to respond. This includes processes such as collagen repair, reduction of oxidative stress, and activation of cellular maintenance pathways. While this does not guarantee specific outcomes for every individual, it does align with what we understand about how the body regulates regeneration. Now, when we bring everything together, the inflammation modulation, the antioxidant activity, the possible influence on cellular signaling, and the skin's natural nighttime absorption cycle, we begin to see why researchers are interested in this oil as more than just a traditional remedy. It is not a miracle substance, and it should not be treated as a replacement for medical care, but it does represent a biologically active compound that interacts with multiple systems in ways that are still being studied. This is also why proper usage matters. Not all black seed oil products are the same. The method of extraction, purity, and concentration of active compounds like thymoquinone can vary significantly between products. Cold-pressed, unrefined versions tend to preserve more of the active compounds, while heat or chemical processing can reduce their effectiveness. Researchers often emphasize consistency and quality when studying its effects, because variability in preparation can lead to very different results. In application, it is typically used in small amounts and gently massaged into targeted areas of the skin, allowing time for absorption before covering the area. The idea is not to overwhelm the skin, but to support it consistently over time. Most studies that show measurable effects are based on repeated use over several weeks, rather than short-term application. At this point, it becomes clear that what we are looking at is not a single isolated effect, but rather a combination of biological interactions that may support the body's natural maintenance systems. However, it is equally important to remain grounded in what the research actually confirms and what is still under investigation. While early findings are promising in several areas, especially inflammation and oxidative stress, other claims require much more clinical validation before any definitive conclusions can be made. What is clear, though, is that the intersection of natural compounds, skin biology, and circadian timing is an active area of scientific interest. And as research continues, we may better understand how interventions like this can be safely and effectively integrated into long-term health strategies, especially for aging populations. At this stage, it is important to step back and connect what all of this actually means in a realistic, grounded way. When you look at the research as a whole, you are not looking at a single miracle cure effect, but rather a cluster of biological influences that may support the body's existing repair systems. That distinction matters because science does not support exaggerated promises, but it does often reveal patterns where natural compounds interact with human biology in multiple useful ways at the same time. What makes black seed oil and its active compound thymoquinone stand out in the scientific literature is not that it performs one dramatic function, but that it appears to influence several different pathways involved in aging and cellular health. These include inflammation control, oxidative stress regulation, immune system modulation, and in early laboratory research, even signaling pathways related to cell survival and cell death. Each of these systems plays a role in how the body ages, recovers, and responds to damage over time. When multiple small effects act together, the overall impact becomes more meaningful, especially in long-term biological processes like skin degeneration or chronic inflammation. At the same time, it is necessary to be precise about what is confirmed and what is still being explored. Many of the most striking findings, especially those involving stem cells and cancer cell behavior, come from laboratory studies rather than large-scale human clinical trials. This means they show biological potential under controlled conditions, but they do not automatically translate into medical treatment outcomes in real-world settings. That gap between laboratory observation and clinical application is where much of ongoing research is focused today. Another important consideration is consistency. Natural compounds can vary widely in strength depending on how they are processed, stored, and applied. This is one reason researchers emphasize standardized extraction methods and measurable active compound levels. Without that consistency, it becomes difficult to compare results or draw reliable conclusions across different studies or user experiences. In other words, the science is not just about the oil itself, but also about how it is prepared and used over time. It is also worth remembering that skin health does not exist in isolation from overall health. The skin reflects internal biological processes such as inflammation levels, hormonal balance, circulation, and immune function. So, when a topical substance appears to improve skin condition, part of that effect may be local, but part of it may also reflect broader systemic interactions. This is why researchers are interested in transdermal pathways, because the skin is not only a barrier, but also a potential route for influencing deeper biological systems. Still, none of this replaces medical treatment where it is needed. Chronic disease, serious inflammatory conditions, and cancer require proper clinical care. Natural compounds, even those with strong scientific interest, are not substitutes for evidence-based medicine. At best, they may serve as supportive tools within a broader health approach, but only when used responsibly and with proper understanding. What makes this topic valuable, especially for older adults, is not the promise of instant results, but the possibility of supporting the body's natural maintenance systems in a low-risk, accessible way. As people age, even small improvements in inflammation control, skin integrity, or cellular stress reduction can contribute to overall quality of life. That is why research into compounds like thymoquinone continues, and why interest in plant-derived bioactive substances remains strong across multiple fields of medicine. Ultimately, the science here is still evolving. Some findings are well established, others are still emerging, and many questions remain open. But what is already clear is that the relationship between natural compounds, skin biology, and systemic health is more complex and more interconnected than most people realize. And as research continues, our understanding of how these elements work together will likely become even more refined and more useful in practical health applications. Now, bringing everything together, the most important takeaway is not that one single oil can reverse aging or replace medical care, but that the body itself still holds a remarkable capacity for repair when it is properly supported. What the research around black seed oil and thymoquinone really highlights is how interconnected biological systems are. Inflammation, oxidative stress, immune regulation, and cellular regeneration are not separate processes happening in isolation. They are part of one continuous network that determines how the body ages and heals over time. When that network is under constant stress, especially in later years, the body's natural repair signals become weaker. Cells do not communicate as efficiently, stem cell activity slows down, and damaged tissue accumulates faster than it can be repaired. This is where compounds that influence multiple pathways at once become scientifically interesting. Not because they override biology, but because they interact with it in subtle, supportive ways that may help restore balance where it has started to decline. It is also important to understand that the skin, often thought of as just an external layer, actually mirrors internal health in many ways. Chronic inflammation inside the body often shows up externally through slower healing, dryness, sensitivity, or visible aging changes. So, when researchers observe improvements in skin condition through topical applications, they are often also observing how external support may be influencing deeper biological processes, even indirectly. At the same time, responsible interpretation of science requires acknowledging limits. Much of the most compelling data on thymoquinone comes from preclinical research, including cell based and animal studies. These are essential steps in scientific discovery, but they are not the final stage. Human biology is more complex, and results can differ significantly once variables like metabolism, dosage, absorption, and long term exposure are introduced. That is why large scale clinical trials are still necessary before any firm medical conclusions can be made. What does stand out, however, is the consistency of certain patterns across studies. Anti inflammatory effects appear repeatedly, antioxidant activity is well documented, immune modulation is observed in multiple contexts, and cellular signaling effects continue to be explored in ongoing research. While none of these findings alone defines a treatment, together they form a scientific profile that explains why interest in this compound continues to grow in academic and medical circles. For practical use, the emphasis remains on quality, consistency, and realistic expectations. If someone chooses to use black seed oil as part of a wellness routine, it should be viewed as a supportive measure, not a cure or replacement for prescribed treatment. It works best as part of a broader approach that includes proper medical care, nutrition, sleep, and lifestyle management. The body responds to patterns over time, not isolated interventions. In the end, what this entire discussion really reveals is something simple but important. Modern medicine and natural compounds are not necessarily in opposition. They are different lenses for understanding the same biological systems. One is driven by controlled pharmaceuticals and targeted interventions, the other by complex natural molecules that interact with multiple pathways at once. Both have value, but both require careful interpretation. As research continues, we may gain a clearer understanding of how compounds like thymoquinone can be safely integrated into evidence based health strategies. Until then, the most grounded position is to stay informed, remain cautious about exaggerated claims, and focus on what is consistently supported by data rather than speculation.